Righteous Felon Craft Jerky is the official jerky of Belly Up Sports. For over a decade, Righteous Felon Craft Jerky has led the American meat snack revolution by concocting delicious, adventurous, U.S.-sourced jerky recipes for uncompromising carnivores across the country. With 15 different flavors to choose from, Righteous Felon has all jerky lovers covered, and by using promo code BELLYUP, you will get 15% off your purchase at RighteousFelon.com. Do your taste buds a favor today and rip into a bag of Righteous Felon jerky.
No, I mean, look, I'll be frank, bro. And this is coming from, again, an avid MLS fan. I love watching MLS players. I believe that the league does need, and the players in the league need more exposure. And it's great to see them get, right, some of the more elite players in the league get some shouts for the U.S. men's national team. But historically, I've never gone out of my way to lock in for Camp Cupcake. It's never really been a priority. I think, there's a lot of criticism going around with what Jurgen Klinsmann's been saying, right? And like, the reality of Camp Cupcake, what it's really intended for, right? How serious coaches actually take it. I still think we learn at least a little bit about some players, right? Like, for those who didn't know, Diego Luna's a fucking dog. I mean, he is, absolutely, right? As Poch put it, big balls. And that's something that I think, teams who have discounted Luna along the way in the league have probably now learned about him. And then beyond that, maybe Poch is learning, right, for future call-ups. You never really know. Klinsmann cited Jeff Cameron as a player that, again, he kind of found, I guess you could say, or discovered during those camps, and it panned out extremely well. So they can be valuable to some extent. It does feel like this is kind of like hey, man, here's a cap, right? Here's a cap with the national team. You did pretty good in your league, right? I don't know how much of that translates over to the senior men's national team and how much competition. I do want to see that gap get bridged over time, though. Like, think about how competitive the U.S. would be if, like, Camp Cupcake didn't feel like Camp Cupcake anymore, right? And, like, the growth of the U.S. men's national team from the men's perspective getting to a point where it's competitive between the January camp and the senior camp. That, to me, is what I hope we kind of grow towards down the line. But, yeah, man, right now, it's still very much Camp Cupcake for me.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. Once again, this isn't a FIFA-sanctioned international break. And I mean, we're not the only national team. Clearly, we found teams that decided to make an international break for their national teams. But, like, I mean, Mexico played against Internacional. I mean,
Yeah.
just for a frame of reference. So Mexico even had their own Camp Concha, I guess you can call it.
That's a good name. I'm going to use that, bro. I'm going to use that.
El Campo Concha.
Sounds
I guess
good.
La Campo Concha.
Yeah, it sounds good to me, bro. Damn, a coach I would hit right now. I'm not gonna lie. But anyway,
there's a reason why I'm fat. Look, there's a reason why I'm fat. Okay, we get it. I think about food. I'm Salvadorian. We created an amazing dish.
That you did.
But yeah, I think Camp Cupcake, at the end of the day, there is some intrigue by it. I think that there was some players that I was actually interested initially going into this camp when they dropped the roster, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's still kind of some of the guys. I was like, I don't know why this guy's getting called up. I don't know why this guy's getting called up. This guy literally punched the guy. I don't know why we're calling him up. But I think that there is some benefit to Camp Cupcake, and obviously, we got to understand what MLS provides. At the end of the day, I know this recent U.S. men's national team call-ups, at the end of the day, has been majority players abroad. And it's probably going to be like that for quite some time. Aside from goalkeepers, at the end of the day, look, for people that are going to ask about goalkeepers, I'm not particularly a fan of young goalkeepers. If they show out, they show out, but
yeah,
I prefer a little bit more experience when it comes to goalkeepers. So, like, for the guys that are like, oh, do we really need Zach Steffen out there? I'm like, is he my top choice? No. But, like, I'm not going to use his age as an excuse as to why he's not getting looked at. I mean, goalkeepers, like, you could be good still at 30. I mean, Keylor Navas is, I still say he's a gem, regardless.
Yeah.
Honestly, he could probably still play for Costa Rica. But,
bro, 100%. There's no way he can't.
But yeah, so I think Camp Cupcake still has its value. I think, and it's not me coming off with this original idea. It came straight from Tactical Manager. This should be looked at as a U23 camp, and I mean, I think that would have been U23, or depending on the player, the position as well. Like goalkeeper, maybe you can get away with getting like a 28-year-old, but like essentially, let's see like the players that are available to us, and bring in guys that we actually want to, well, at least we more intrigued to see. Because like, no offense to Miles Robinson, I think I got enough from you now.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to see too much now from you. I kind of know what I'm getting from you. Same thing. Walker Zimmerman, as much as I love the guy, I just don't think they're going to be part of that 2026 roster. And that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Clearly, I'm always wrong. But
No, I mean, bro, I agree with you 100%. I think maybe us moving to that would be the sign that we need that it's no longer Camp Cupcake, right? It's no longer like, hey, our annual obligation as a federation to, give some caps away to MLS players so we know what we have in that league. So I think that kind of is what it is right now. I agree that us scaling to a point where we can treat that as just an opportunity to truly analyze young talents. And I mean, even if it means calling up some younger talents that some may even argue don't deserve senior caps because of their age or because of their lack of experience, right? Like, how else are you going to know what they can offer to a growing side, right? I remember how young Pulisic kind of came into the fold, and he wasn't a part of a Camp Cupcake deal. He was just so promising that it made sense to push him all the way up into the senior team. And we just don't know who's going to step up in those opportunities unless we give them, right? You don't have to give them to a significant amount of players, right? But if there are some very, very promising, the Kevin Sullivans of the world, right? Some very promising youngsters who otherwise maybe even for the dual nationals who may not get that opportunity that young with their other country. Again, it could be a way to sweeten the pot to recruit those talents and bring them in, but at the same time, just bring a lot of legitimacy to this January camp.
the first question I'm going to ask you is, do we have depth from this camp? Which I mean, obviously, once again, it's a lot of taking it with a grain of salt. But do you feel like there's depth in certain position groups just from seeing this camp that maybe a fringe player that can maybe jump up in that the legitimate U.S. men's national team?
I think the one place I would look for depth in general, right? Because we need it at the senior national team. Well, two positions. You mentioned fullback, right? We all saw what happened to Sergio Dest the minute he goes out, right? Where nothing wrong with Joe Scally. A lot of USMNT fans didn't like that, but I think he is still a hell of a player in the Bundesliga. But again, right, depending on kind of what you want in this team, it does take a little drop off even from the starter to the second spot. That and striker, right? And I do think we have great strikers. Don't get me wrong. It's just that no one cemented that spot. Not Balogun, not Beppe. Like it's just open, and I think that this camp should be used to see who can create competition in those areas. I like the finish from Brian White, right? I'm not saying that he gives us depth, right? But those are the battles that I'm looking for. But with all that said, based on this camp, man, I don't think we really have depth just yet in those two spots. I really don't. It's again, it's not to say that they can't ever challenge for that, but right now, would I be comfortable putting them in? And we don't have to worry about this right now, right? A World Cup qualifier, but would I be comfortable or confident putting them into an away match against Guatemala for actual 3 points, something that means something? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's a very difficult question with this team, and maybe it's just because we saw two games that they probably should have won anyway. So tougher competition. Maybe I have a different opinion, but right now I don't know how much I can pull away from this and say, yeah, we have depths in those two spots that we need it.
All right. Speaking of just players, like who do you feel has earned more attention? Like maybe they're the fringe guys that come in that the next legitimate camp, which obviously is against is I believe for Panama for the
Yeah. Um, I think for those types of games, I still think Luna earned a lot of respect from Poch. I think he's probably going to be one of the clear favorites to keep getting looks, even with the senior team. I think he's someone against some of these CONCACAF nations you can not maybe start, but you can give him decent minutes, right? He comes off the bench, he with fresh legs, 30 plus minutes to go, still gets to again, link up with proper midfielders, right, to try and break down some of these other teams of these other nations. I'd be curious to see what that looks like. And I still think you can't rule out someone like we all, again, if you're an MLS fan, especially if you're a Minnesota fan, we all know about Caden Clark, right? I still think you have to be able to account for him a little bit because of his age, because of his experience. And dude, the wild card here moving forward, because the guy, again, basically the Greek freak for the U.S. men's national team, right? To an extent. I mean, just gives us something that we don't have anywhere else. And that's the thing. X Factor is a thing. It's a valuable thing in this game. Agyemang had just having that crazy versatility in terms of what his athleticism it allows him to do. You never know, right? I mean, again, bro, we saw Greg Berhalter call up Jesus Ferreira. I mean, for a World Cup. At the end of the fucking day, like we may see one of these guys called up as like for meaningful matches as a wild card.
No, yeah, and I think argument. I think the one thing that I will say, and me and Edward have talked about it, is that as far and I mean this isn't anything against Balogun and nothing against Pepe, but I feel like the U.S. has always been very good when you had a big body nine, and obviously Josie Altidore. Um, I wouldn't say Clint Dempsey's a big dude, but I mean he's a physical presence nonetheless.
For sure.
Brian McBride. I mean, the guy was a statue. And so, I mean, I think like whenever you had this big body nine, and they were always productive. Josie Altidore was a very solid nine for the U.S. for a good amount of time. Obviously, unfortunately, his hamstrings didn't feel the same way. Um, but I think the U.S. like once again, maybe in Pepe in Pochettino's system, maybe Pepe and Balogun benefit more being a quicker, sleeker forward. But I don't know, man. Sometimes just a big nine just seems, at one point I was hoping that Pfock was gonna be it because that dude was just massive. But
Yeah.
that was a reach.
I mean, you're 100% right about arguing, right? I think and the big number nine is something that I think not a lot of fans think of as a utility player to just be able to call on the bench situationally, right? Look at recent tournaments on the international stage. I think back to like the Dutch quarterfinal, I think it was against Argentina. Granted, they lost in penalty kicks, but being able to call up who was it
Weghorst.
on the bench? Yeah, Veghorst, right? And just change the entire complexity of the game. Like, again, not someone that you probably go in there to start. You expect to really just bag goals left and right, but going up against tired legs, Argentine side that's been pushed tooth and nail, and then he's just a massive physical presence to deal with, right? You see on the club level, right? Barcelona a few years ago when they were down horrendous, having Luke de Jong to call up off the bench as just this option that we don't really have. Someone that's very tall that could find the ball in the air, they could cross the ball into time and time again. And it's a mismatch almost always when you have guys like that. So they may not be the guys you rely upon heavily, but there's going to be those moments, right, where someone like that could come off the bench and just have a cult hero moment. So I don't mind it. Like I said, if we see more of him, especially at the next level with the senior side, not mad.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, you already mentioned Diego Luna. I think also, I think Jack McGlynn gets a fair shout. I think at least what he was able to provide in this camp. I think at least to get at least a little bit more attention, whether it's just from the scouting department or gets a call up. But I think there's going to be a little bit more attention with Jack McGlynn. We'll see how he pans out. And I mean, you mentioned Caden Clark, and I think. Um, since he came back to the MLS, it's all about trying to get him back, trying to get back, find his groove, and kind of similar like how you view Jordy Mihalovic. Hopefully that he can come back to the MLS, reform, and then maybe get another shot at Europe. Caden Clark, maybe I don't know what happened. I think RB Leipzig was maybe a little too big, too soon. Maybe Salzburg probably would have been the right place for him at least initially, kind of how Brendan Aronson did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think and Kenyon Clark's still very young. It's surprisingly if you haven't realized, but his if you've been following his story, you'd think he's very much older, but he's actually still fairly young. And I think maybe same thing with him. Hopefully Montreal pans out a little bit better. I don't know what happened with Minnesota that he had to get traded, but Montreal, I'm hoping that it could be a good story for Kenyon Clark.
Yeah, I think so. I think he needs something, right? You mentioned like the Mihalovic story. It's not that these players aren't good enough to play in Europe. It's that again, right? It has to be almost the right environment. How many times have we seen a player go to a certain environment? It's just again, maybe they're in full rebuild, maybe it's just toxic at its core, right? Whatever it may be, it may not be the right setting for them. So, coming back to a league like MLS, finding the confidence that you need to compete at another level, not a bad thing at all. And I think again, even this move, right? Getting some reps with the national team, getting more of that confidence. Because again, that's what caps will do for a player, right? Makes you feel like all the work you're putting at the club level is worth it, despite how Camp Cupcake is viewed. So, so yeah, man, I think that again, he's someone that because we've talked about him for quite some time as a youngster, I expect to be more relevant in these conversations.
Yeah, and then before we get to MVP of Camp Cupcake, but I'm pretty sure it's very clear. But I mean, Mako Miljevic, like it's the elephant in the room.
Oh,
Is
God.
this the last time we're gonna see this guy, or has Poch developed a soft spot for him?
I don't know. I also don't know what the fuck he's doing here. But at the same time, right? Like, bro, just think about this for a second, right? A player who wasn't good enough for Montreal wasn't good enough for Montreal. Like, just let's be honest about it. Wasn't good enough for Montreal, but and again goes through all the bullshit that he went through, right? Which to me is still crazy, right? Not only did he break the rules and sign up to play in another league under an alias, but then he spat and punched somebody out. All of that. And then he misses the fucking PK. All of that to score a banger, towards the very end. And it was kind of that, a banger, in my opinion. It was a good take. The trap itself wasn't the best, but I still got a good hit on it. It went in. I don't think I'd be surprised if Potch calls him up again for anything outside of something like Camp Cupcake. I'll be honest. I don't know, man. It was a weird one. And maybe it was just, again, a low risk opportunity, considering that he has other citizenship, right? At the end of the day, this is part of Potch's job. He's gonna have to learn how to recruit dual nats, right? Make USMNT attractive to young and promising talents who have citizenship elsewhere. Maybe it's some of that. But if he never gets brought back into this, I mean, you're not gonna get any crying from me. So it was a weird one. It was a weird one.
I agree with that, and I also want to mention Brian Gutierrez. I don't know why I didn't mention him, but I think he had some good moments. I mean, he played both matches, so I think that's
He's a good player, bro. If you're a Fire fan, I mean, you like bro, you like Guti, right? I mean, at the end of the day, he's someone that I think is the playmaker in Chicago. Depending on who else they want to acquire to Berhalter, but I'd be shocked if Berhalter doesn't try to like build this team around him, and we'll see how high up he goes, right? Who knows? Maybe he develops pretty quickly here, gets some shouts. Poch wants to bring him back in. You never know, but
I think
he's
his
still young.
versatility is really good. And I'm not look, I'm not saying Mexico was like trying to get him to come to the Mexican national team, but I think at least cap tying him at least, benefits the US in some sense. But
Yeah.
I think Guti has always been a standout to me from when I have watched Chicago Fire. And I even told Edward, I was like, hey, if you're gonna watch somebody on from this Camp Cupcake, look at Brian Gutierrez because I think the way he moves with the balls, if you had to tell somebody that this is an MLS player, I think they're gonna be like, oh shit, really? So
Yeah, I agree.
I
And
think
he fits the formation too, because that's the exact formation they play in Chicago. So like he knows what to do in that system. He could play across every one of those attacking mid positions. So yeah, I expect, like I said, this is just some of the things Poch is going to have to do. He's going to have to find a way to create more competition in the camp by calling up players that maybe there's a fear that they could get called up by another country, right? So just to keep the camp fresh, to keep it competitive, you still, even if you feel like there's a long shot that they make the senior team, you just got to keep recruiting them, right? Keep bringing them in, keep giving them a little bit of motivation to try and work their way up the national team ladder.
yeah, I think so. All right, who is your MVP of Camp Cupcake?
Bro, I mean, who else? Right? Who else is it going to be? Dallas, bring fucking Diego Luna to Dallas, to Toyota Stadium. 100%, man. Like, we have to do this, man. There's rumors about Evander and whatnot, but I love Luna. I think that he's kind of, again, a misunderstood player from a lot of reasons or a lot of perspectives, right? And we talked about the Texas teams, but there's plenty of other teams around the league that didn't rate Luna until he started producing. And now, man, you could just see it. It's not just the fact that we know he has quality on the ball. We saw that all across the camp. It's we If we didn't know about his mentality, now you know, right? Now you know. Nothing phases him. This man just wants to win. And honestly, bro, like I feel like up to this point he has been disrespected on multiple levels. I don't think that's going to happen anymore.
Yeah, I think he got snubbed from the Olympic roster. Don't know what the hell happened there. Yeah, Diego Luna has. I think the best thing that he was able to do for himself was sign with El Paso Locomotive, get his opportunity, and then, Real Salt Lake was just happened to be the team that gave him his shot. But and once again, I'm gonna shame the state of Texas that this kid was literally he's not from Texas. I know that, but he was playing in Texas at the time. Um, a lot of people wrote him off once again because they thought he was fat. And I mean, this kid is a Barcelona residency academy product from Arizona, not from Barcelona. But it's still, I mean, that academy has brought out a lot of good players into MLS. I mean, Caden Clark is another one, actually an example of another graduate from that academy. But yeah, I think you can't deny Diego Luna. And then I mean, the fact that now Pochettino has full respect of that kid because he broke his nose. He said, "Don't take me out of this game just yet. Take me out at halftime, but let me play." And then goes out there, gets an assist. Should just tell you everything about this kid.
He deserves to get his flowers moving forward. Again, I will be shocked if he stays with Real Salt Lake long term. It may be the case for this season because they've lost Charango, right? And you just can't lose two major fucking pieces in the same offseason like that. But I still think that whether he moves on to a big market club in MLS or he gets his shot elsewhere, I think that Poch is going to, again, just keep him on the back of the mind, right? When you think about those fringe final spots in the roster on the senior side, who you feel is going to give you the most late in games when it really matters, I think Luna has the heart, and he's probably convinced him now.